Okay, everybody. Today I want to talk about what we really want. Not what we say we want, but what we really want. I want to talk about power and control and accountability. Actually, wait, we don't want that last one so much. That one is not one that people actually want, even though often they sign up for it. They pay for it. So I want to talk about accountability in a different way than it's usually discussed. I want to talk about stepping into your own authority and agency over your life. And this is based on years of coaching, on years of interacting with people. I've always said if you want to learn about the mind, do not get a degree in psychology, do not become a psychiatrist, work in the field of weight loss and you will learn everything there is to know about people's motivations and drives and how to deal with them. People, it turns out, here's a shocker. Stop the presses now. It turns out people are not easy. They're not always easy. And I am not excluding myself. I may be the most difficult of all. That might be true of all people who are in coaching professions, because they've seen the other side. They live on the other side of the curtain. So here's a typical scenario. Someone will come to me and they will say, I really need help. And I'll say, great, and we'll get started. And they're coming to me because the help they need is they need structure, they need accountability, maybe they need some expert guidance. Not everyone, right? It's very common that people will say, well, I know what to do. I'm just having trouble doing it. Now, this is a really good place to be, to say, yeah, I know I need help. That's the first thing we resist, is the very realization that help can be helpful. Because we're so into, I should be able to do this on my own. Like, why do I need to hire somebody who's going to tell me what to do when I already know what to do? I just got to get my shit together. As if getting your shit together is so easy. So people come to me, and part of the deal is accountability. And then the strangest thing happens. They resist the accountability. They resist the structure. It's an incredible little game that we play. And why do people do it? Now, this isn't everyone, by the way. This is, there are some people who operate a little bit differently, and we can talk about them as well. But why do people have so much emotional resistance on the subject of accountability when what they really want is they want their outcome and they've already had the recognition that accountability can be helpful? I think there are a few things, right? Number one is there's fear of judgment. Nobody wants to be judged. Nobody wants to be judged harshly. And guess what? People don't even want to be judged for being great, because that sets an expectation. So I'll have people who won't only avoid me if they screw up. And that's a pretty natural phenomenon, right? You screw up, you don't want to tell, you don't want to be judged. But I'll have people who will have a great result and won't share that with me either. And that's part of the game, because if they share the good stuff, they have to share the not so good stuff. And they have to make themselves vulnerable and expose themselves to me, not literally, but expose themselves to me to perhaps be judged. And who wants that? And then there's also the idea of failing in front of someone else, right? So it's compounding the failure. It's bad enough if you don't succeed at something that you really want. But then you have another person who knows it too. Who needs that? And finally, there is the fear of giving up control. Now, this is all part and parcel of, like I said, this is what we want most in life. We want to have control. The truth is, we really can't. I mean, we can control some things directly, but more than control, we want to have a sense of control. Now, think about this because there's so much in this universe that we cannot control directly. We can control a lot of things indirectly, but direct control can be very difficult. And we get this sense of entropy of things becoming chaotic. And the difference between somebody with a sense of control and somebody without a sense of control is the difference between somebody who is confident and walking tall in this world and somebody who is in a fetal position on the couch. Like, it could be that stark, can it? So again, the paradox is when we hire a coach, we want that accountability. That's part and parcel of the deal. That's part of what we're paying for. And then, of course, we push back against it as soon as it happens. You know, there's this one gal who comes to mind, and I remember this distinctly. Uh, she started with us. She was doing great. Then after a few weeks, I wasn't hearing from her anymore. I started texting her, calling her. I mean, I did everything but show up at her door. I did it multiple times. I didn't hear back from her. And when I did, she was pissed off. Right? Like, I mean, why are you doing this? Was the attitude I was getting from her. And I said to her, you came to us for help. And this is help. This is what it looks like. So why are you resisting it? And I did not hear back from her. And it's a shame. In her mind, I'm sure at some point there was a reversal from me being her champion to me being a jerk. Right? Who was I to stalk her? This was her thing. She paid for it. So, she wanted to play it her way. I don't know exactly what was going on, but I'm sure that some version of that was happening. Now, it's a really interesting thing because here's what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, as a coach, to have people reliant upon you is a bad thing. It is bad for the client. It is bad for the coach. So it's understandable that at the beginning of a process, the clients borrow the coach's power and energy. That's as it should be. That's part of the realization. Hey, maybe I need some help here. Maybe I can't do it on myself, or I can, but it's very difficult. I need some help getting going. So at first, a person borrows that, right? They're relying on my structure and my knowledge and energy. But here's the problem. The problem is that real change can only happen within an individual's own person, within their own heart and mind. So the power needs to be handed back to the individual. And if they don't accept it, if they become too reliant on the coach, that is a bad state of affairs. The goal is to have you become your own source of accountability. See, that's when you kind of regain some agency, right? Regain some control and power. And that's the part of the process. Now, that happens. And then it doesn't happen also because of all of this mental machinery and emotional tomfoolery that we're discussing right now. But that's the way it's supposed to go. Now, I got to tell you something. I have to be honest with you. I used to have this whole system. My staff would check on people, they would call them regularly, they would chase them down. But over time, I realized I don't want to have people stuck in that child parent dynamic. I tell clients now, I'm here, I'm present, I'm available. I will never fail you or give up on you, but I'm not going to chase you. It's exhausting on my part. And it's not what we're trying to accomplish. The work is about, showing up for yourself, becoming your own source of energy and knowledge and power. Does that make sense? And believe me, it's not that I don't care. I care a great deal. But between the two things, on the one hand, it's exhausting for me. And trust me, and many of you have experienced this, you could chase people to the end of the earth. And if they don't want to speak to you, if they want to avoid you, they're going to. And on the other hand, it's not working for what we're trying to accomplish in the first place, where the person regains their energy and their confidence and their agency. That's what we want. In other words, it can't be accountability through force. And sometimes it seems that way, and it could go that way. It's funny. The guy that owned this practice before me, the guy I took over from, I still hear horror stories about him. I still hear from people that he would yell and scream at them. And you want to know the stranger things? Some people like that. They like that. He was punishing them because, at least I think this is the reason, at some level they thought they deserved to be punished. Again, that's not the same as regaining power. You can get an outcome. You can control things by beating people up, maybe by beating yourself up, at least for a short time. That can happen, right? We've all seen it. We've all been afraid of people, of parents, coaches, teachers, what have you, and did the right thing, at least temporarily, and did not grow in the least from it. So I don't think that's the ultimate win that's possible. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes people need a come to Jesus talk. Sometimes they need a reminder. Sometimes it's got to be like, hey, what are you doing? You told me that you wanted to get off this medication that you were on, that you're afraid of, God forbid, something bad happening to you in your health and becoming reliant on your children. And I mean, there's all kinds of motivations, right? And sometimes you have to remind a person of that and say, so, what's the deal here? But that's not the same as punishing and beating up, which I don't do. I'm trying to think if I have. I don't think I have. As long as I've been doing this, I don't believe that I have. All right. So the question is, how do you become accountable for yourself? How do you step into that role where you're simultaneously the player and the coach? Now, let's not forget, it's always a great idea to have a coach. Michael Jordan always had a coach. Usain Bolt always had a coach. Messi, I mean, the best of the best always had coaches, right? Because it's good to have someone who's not inside of your head to give you some perspective and to help guide you and to bounce things off of, right? That's what happens with my clients who really take it on for themselves. They step into their own agency. And they're telling me what they're doing that's worked for them. And I'm saying, great, keep doing it. I mean, the ideal scenario is where I put on the pom poms and I'm just going, rah, rah, you go. Now, if you want to know how, if I had to give you tips or steps in how to regain that accountability and be your own coach and take back that power after loaning it out temporarily. First of all, you got to get clear on the why. Most people are at first, but then it can become obscured. So name your why. If the goal is yours, accountability doesn't feel so burdensome. And that's the same thing with compliance. I remember going to a seminar. I went to a series of seminars with this one particular chiropractor who taught a technique. And I'll never forget what he said regarding dealing with clients. He said, whenever a person makes a choice, compliance goes up. So his approach was never tell a person what to do. Give them choices. And that's what I do. If I'm talking about exercise with a client, I'll say to them, okay, there are different kinds of exercise you can do. What do you enjoy the most? Do you prefer heavy, intense exercise? Do you prefer long, slow kind of exercise? Right? I mean, I could tell you what's the best based on studies for your metabolism, but what is that worth? If you're not going to do it, by the way, the answer is high intensity interval training, at least based on the recent studies, right? But that's not appropriate for everyone, and everyone is not going to want to do that. So the best exercise, and my clients have heard me say this, the best exercise is the one you enjoy and you're going to do. That might be dancing. That might be hiking. That's the one I want to encourage you to do. I heard some parenting advice one time, and this expert said, your job as a parent is to find out what your child wants to do and then encourage them to do that. And I thought that was awesome. Now, let's just caveat that, right? If it turns out your child wants to be a serial murderer, please intervene. Do not encourage that kind of behavior. But if the kid wants to do something that maybe you don't even want for them, but it's what they desire, then you encourage them to be the best at it. I mean, God knows people are paying whatever, $60,000 a year for college. They want their kid to graduate with a degree that could be practical, right? That they could put to use. And then the kid comes to you one day and says, no, I want to be an actor. And it's like, okay, well, that was a lot of tuition money but I got news for you. There are actors who make it. They're working actors. And the child has the right to make their own decisions and to have their own failures also. So what else can you do to be more accountable to yourself? Set up your own rhythm. Be proactive. Don't wait for someone to check on you. Initiate the communication. You see, if we avoid, we're not initiating communication. And the idea is to communicate whether or not you feel like it at that particular moment. And by the way, I could write volumes about this because I'm not great at it. In my own life, with my own people that I'm supposed to be communicating with. Family, for example. It's better off to, listen, I'm going to say something here, and I don't know if anyone's going to take offense to it, but there are differences between men and women. I've observed this on my own. And one of them has to do with communication. Males, and this is not true in every case, but males tend to be less communicative. So And it's more so for certain people in certain families and situations, right? So in my particular family, the men don't initiate communication that much. We'll call each other if we have something to say. Otherwise, why are you calling? There's nothing to say, nothing to discuss, right? We don't check in other words. And the females in my family get very frustrated by this. They don't know what's happening. We could be in a ditch. I've literally said to my mother, no, I'm not going to call you when the plane lands because if something happens, you'll hear about it on the news. And I don't want to get your hopes up if I forget to call, right? It doesn't occur to me that when I land, that I should be reaching out to someone, to whomever I was leaving. I'm giving the example of my mother because that scenario has happened many times. So the better approach is to initiate communication, is to just say, okay, even if you don't have anything to talk about, to be like, all right, just check it in. I want you to know I'm okay. How are you? And these days we can do it by text. Texts ruin everything. It really has not been helpful at all for human interactions. All right. Now, here's another thing I want you to do. I want you to notice when you're outsourcing your responsibility to someone else. I used the example of Michael Jordan before. I'm not sure if I completed the thought. I said he always had a coach. But here's the thing, it didn't matter in a certain sense. Of course it was helpful. But he always took responsibility. He wanted it more than the coach wanted it. So it was able to be a collaboration, more so than some kind of a parent-child situation, which all too often coaching relationships can become. Wouldn't that be great? Think about this. Think about the ideal situation. Wouldn't it be great if in any situation where you were accountable, you were initiating communication and not waiting for it to happen? And thus the relationship was more of a collaboration. And from the other side, in the relationships that you have, be it with your child or at work or whatever, if it became that kind of a collaboration where you weren't doing all the work, where the individual who you were coaching was so responsible, they were coming to you with solutions. Business owners hate that, right? Everyone's coming to them with problems, just handing it, throwing it on your lap. Solve this, solve this, solve it. No, come to me with a solution. Okay, I'm getting excited here. So take a minute to think, where in life are you still relying on an external push? And I think you'll realize that we do this almost constantly in various ways. In various ways, right? Because there's not always a coaching relationship set up, but there's some kind of a force or compulsion that could be at work. We may not want to work, but we don't want the consequences. It's a similar kind of dynamic, right? Not exactly the same. And think about it this way too. Have you ever had moments where you've said, I've got this. I know what to do. I want to do it. I'm motivated to doing it. So therefore, I've got it. And there's not a lot of effort needed. Here's a tip for you. Effort sucks. Effort sucks. Effort often means struggling against some kind of resistance or not being in alignment. But if you're in alignment, if you know what to do and you want to do it, you're motivated to do it, you're not resisting it, then that's when things tend to go smoothly, which is what we want. I would submit to you that control, which is what we're all trying to have, right? Personal power and control. And I don't mean in the nefarious way. I don't mean in a conspiratorial way. I mean in the ability to dictate our own lives and affect outcomes. I would submit to you that you know when you have full control when things are easy, when there's not that resistance. And that's when you can create good momentum. All right. So I hope this is helpful for you. Um, I have clients who play it all the ways, right? At any one time, I have the kind of clients I'm collaborating with, and they're telling me the solutions that they've come up with. And I have clients who are avoiding me. And I have clients who are going back and forth. I mean, whatever exists in the whole panoply of human behavior, that's happening simultaneously. And that's just part of my gig. And please don't hear anything I'm saying as complaining or whatever. I'm just looking at the mechanics of how people operate in the realm of power and control and accountability. And we're checking out those dynamics. And I think it can be very useful if you look at that for yourself. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. And if you have any questions, if you need any help, of course, always reach out to me. If you are a client right now who is listening and yet avoiding me, like we're talking about, please don't. Just send me a text. Tell me you're all right. Tell me you're not in a ditch. And treat me like you would your mother if you were being a considerate child. All right. That's going to be it for today. Thank you for joining me, and we will speak again soon.